So we need to talk about extrusion. It's great. It's really powerful. You take a face on a model, hopefully a quad, press E and all of a sudden your shape starts coming to life. You're creating amazing designs in seconds. Hopefully you know already that you don't extrude a face if it's surrounded by a flat or even mostly flat area. You always inset it first. It's really important to do this. We always do this. It creates an area of curvature into which we can place a control loop. It doesn't leave 5-spoked poles on areas of curvature, and we don't have to throw loops all around the entire mesh to control the connection area. That's the main thing. You can create really complex shapes and designs in just a few minutes, and if you know how to use even one or two of Blender's 1,000 other amazing tools, you can create something really entertaining. Now, you might have noticed I'm creating this shape, whatever it is, using the UV sphere. And if you know a little bit about subdivision surface modelling, you'll know that the UV sphere has what is widely considered to be an unfixable problem when dealing with the subdivision surface modifier. And extruding on curved surfaces creates unusual bending of light around the edges of extrusions which fall into the mesh. Well, I have a fix for both of these things. So, you find that the subdivision surface modifier leaves us with all this pinching at the top. So we don't generally use the UV sphere, which is a shame because it has a really useful topology everywhere else for insetting and extruding shapes. So my fix goes something like this. Firstly, select the very top and bottom vertex on a UV sphere. Then, press Ctrl and plus to expand the selection to include the next loop of vertices. Now, press Alt and G to create a new vertex group containing these points. We can rename that over here to something like Sphere Pole Fix. Now, there's a modifier which you probably haven't used called Normal Edit. The only use I seem to have seen for it is for making leaves on trees seem thicker. Anyway, let's add one of those now, leave it at radial and open up the Mix section. In there, select our vertex group from this drop-down box and change the maximum angle to 0. Now this modifier does nothing at all until we tell Blender we want to change the normals on an object. And we do that by going to the Object Data Properties, which is this green mesh icon, and in the Normals section choose Auto Smooth, and change the value to 180 degrees, which actually means it's doing nothing at all. Our modifier will decide what to change and that's all. Now let's focus on our problem area and go back to the modifier panel, and you'll see that if I click the little arrow next to max angle, the effect starts to disappear without affecting anything else on the mesh. By the time you get to around 2 degrees, the effect is gone completely. I normally like to say it 6 or 7 because if you deform this mesh, it can start to come back. Now the rest of the mesh is left completely untouched, and we have removed the reason not to use UV spheres in subdivision surface modelling. Now that's not all. Extruding on curved surfaces causes more problems, which you may or may not have noticed, but when you start dealing with recreating real objects, you will notice that there, and you'll wonder why you can't get rid of them. Well, the Normal Edit modifier can fix this too. If you look closely at how the light flows over our extruded areas, you'll see that the light bends over them unnaturally. We're used to seeing it, but it's just not correct. This is curvature that we've not modelled. It's a rendering error, and again, it's because of the poles. This time, the culprit is 5-spoked poles, and they are everywhere when you're modelling on curved surfaces. To fix them, we'll need another Normal Edit modifier. First, we need to go into Edit mode and select all of the inset borders. And we do that by alt-clicking on any of the edges within a border while we're in Face Select mode. And if we do this at the very end of modelling, we have to go around and find them all and select them all. What I would normally do is, while I'm modelling, add all of these borders to an active vertex group. But for this, I'll just show you. We go around and we select them all. So again, press Ctrl and G and create a new vertex group out of all of these points. Now add another Normal Edit modifier, and in the Mix section of this one, reduce the maximum angle to 0 and select our new group from the Vertex Group drop-down box. Now this one needs a more specific value for the maximum angle, and the one I have found that works best is 4.2 degrees. Now, when we orbit around our sphere, we'll see that all of these kind of rendering anomalies have been eliminated. Now it's really important that these two Normal Edit modifiers live together, directly after the Subdivision Surface modifier. Now we can add other modifiers to distort the mesh any way we want, and these things will work very well. There is a point where the problem can start to show through, and I do have a solution to this as well, but it's a little more involved, so for now, this will do. Now, there are subdivision solutions to most things in modelling, and I would always advise trying to find those solutions first, and I'll teach them all as we go along, but for problems that I can't fix, this is a great technique. Now, do remember that when you apply a subdivision surface modifier to a UV sphere, you need to scale it in X and Y by a factor of 1.01, because it does change the shape slightly. Also, and I've not done it here, but it's worth creating an empty at the origin of the object and using that as the Normal Edit's center. Then it can become the basis for much more complex uses when your mesh needs to endure heavy deformation, but that's slightly more advanced than we need right now, so I've not done that here. Now, I only came up with this method in recent weeks, and I'm still working on getting it to behave perfectly with deformation and on non-spherical geometry. It is possible, and I'll make a full video on that when I've worked out all the little topological problems, but for now it should open up a whole world of modelling possibilities for you to play with. And finally, I do just need to say that this method's great if you're staying in Blender or just using your models in something like Unity or Unreal, but in the world of professional modelling, this model is now broken. Models with any modifications to normals that take them away from the standard calculated average are always considered to be unacceptable. I'll make a video explaining why, and I'll go through all of the guidelines for making sure your models are industry standard, and I'll try to explain in some detail why all of these restrictions exist. But that's enough of this for now. It's a good time to get on with the Rook.